Yo, what's going on, YouTube? And welcome back to Goal Line Hockey. It's your boy Kevin Forsythe, and today we have a very interesting discussion to go over as the Montreal Canadiens, despite having the first overall pick in this year's draft being hosted in Montreal, we're starting to hear rumors that, as interested as they are in Shane Wright at first overall, Juraj Slafkovsky is also very much at the top of the Canadiens list. Well, you can't draft two players with one pick, as far as I know. Well, the rumor has been that they have been apparently in contact potentially with the New Jersey Devils, maybe going after the second overall pick. The Montreal Canadiens drafting first and second overall potentially in this year's draft. Does that make sense? What would they have to give up to Montreal to the Devils in order for them to make that trade? We're going to go over all of that in today's video. So this started off with an article from the Hockey Writers, and they really stirred it up with this article earlier this week. So the Montreal Canadiens, obviously the big storyline is they are hosting the NHL draft in Bell Center. Which actually this draft was supposed to be back in 2020, and obviously with everything with the pandemic the past 2 years, it got pushed back 2 years. So they've been waiting a very long time in Montreal in order to host this draft. They're drafting first overall, which obviously is a huge thing, and they're launching a rebuild right now. And the thing is, this is again the question is, do they go after Slafkovsky or Shane Wright? I think it's pretty set in stone. I think it's an easy answer. You go for the center here in Shane Wright. But listen, a lot of people have been very high on this other guy, Juraj Slafkovsky. I've talked about this in my other videos. Make sure to check those out about the draft. He's being compared to Jaromir Jagr. And maybe not lasting as long as Jagr as an NHL player for 20 plus years, but the type of player that Jagr has been. So I think that's something that you have to consider here. And, if the Devils were to trade that pick, what do they have to give up? Because the thing is, let's say, so Montreal wants to keep that pick. So that's the first thing. They would have to keep their first overall pick, but they'd also have to be, what would it take for them in order to also get the second pick? So obviously their most valuable asset this summer is that first overall pick. Then after that, it would be a mix between Cole Caulfield and Nick Suzuki, right? As that, those next top tier, valued guys on the team. But who's after that? Well, back, say, 3 years ago, you probably would have said Shea Weber, Carey Price, Brendan Gallagher, right? That's not necessarily the case now. They've had a lot of injuries, and they aren't going to be the most attractive options on the market. Likely one of those contracts is going to Arizona, just to create cap space for the Habs. So in that scenario, okay, so those guys are out. Well, what else is there? They do have a lot of draft capital, and that is an advantage here for the Canadiens. So you look at this year, right? For this year's draft, the Montreal Canadiens have one of the deepest draft pick pools in the league. They have 2 first-round picks, their own, and the Calgary Flames, which they got in the Tyler Toffoli trade. They also have a second-round pick from Edmonton. Now, there is a star on that. It depends on if the Oilers reach the Stanley Cup final, Montreal will receive Edmonton's second-round pick instead. So it depends. So either way, Montreal will have a second-round pick from Edmonton either this year or next year. They also have 3 third-round picks, 3 fourth-round picks, their own 5th and 6th, and they also have the St. Louis Blues 7th-round pick. So you look at where they're drafting, they have 4, 7, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 draft picks in 7 rounds. So you average that out, they're drafting twice each round this year. And again, you look in those top 4 rounds, they will be drafting 10 players in the first 4 rounds, which is pretty impressive. They also have Florida's first round pick next year. So when you look at the draft capital they have, that is what they're going to have to dig into, especially if you're looking at the second overall pick. Now, is everybody saying this is a weaker draft and this and that? it is still the second overall pick in the NHL draft. The Devils are going to ask for a king's ransom. Now, here's the thing. If you're the Devils, do you look back in 10 years from now and say, all right, well, we got those multiple first-round picks, second-round picks, prospects, but we didn't get Slafkovsky. That's where things, you have to weigh that if you're Tom Fitzgerald as the general manager of the Devils, because that would be a massive trade if they were to make that move. And from what we've heard from the Devils, from all accounts, they want to trade that second overall pick for an NHL-ready player. So if that's the case, getting multiple draft picks and stuff like that isn't going to help what the Devils actually want to accomplish by trading that pick. They want a high-impact player for that second overall pick. They don't want a ton of draft picks, right? So that's where that kind of lies. But this is what I'm looking at. And this is, again, I think this is a good starting point. You have to include the first and second round picks this year. So Calgary's first round pick this year, Edmonton's second pick next year. I honestly would even say Florida's pick next year. Again, you're giving up a lot of draft capital here. You have to throw in a player. You're probably looking at guys like Christian Dvorak. I would say a goalie. The Devils desperately need some goalie depth, especially if they trade Mackenzie Blackwood this summer. Nico Daws isn't ready to be a starter at the National Hockey League level. You're looking at a guy like Caden Primo. I don't think they're going to go after a guy like Samuel Montembeault. So it would probably be Caden Primo. Again, that's a good goalie prospect for the Habs. Do you want to trade that away? And Riley Kidney, who has just recently played with the Laval Rocket. But if it's not Primo or Kidney, there are plenty of other good prospects in the prospect pool for the Habs. Jesse Yelenin, Jan Mysek, Caden Gooley, Josh Brook. These are all early round draft picks in the top 3 rounds from now, all the way back to, say, 2017, 2018. So these are good NHL prospects, but again, is that what the Devils want? Because that's what Montreal has to give, right? If they're going to make this trade, you're giving up prospects and stuff like that. Because truthfully, if you look at the Montreal Canadiens, what high-impact player is going to be able to help the Devils next season? It's going to be probably a Josh Anderson, who the Devils have been, or the Canadiens have been pretty adamant they don't want to get rid of Josh Anderson. Do the Devils want to take on Brendan Gallagher's massive $6.5 million contract per year? At that rate, you might as well sign a Riley Smith, a Philip Forsberg, or whoever else in free agency and not give up all that, not giving up the second overall pick. So that's where things get a little bit more interesting. On the blue line, there is some interesting names. They did just acquire Justin Barron. I don't see them trading him. Alexander Romanov, his contract does end this season. I don't think they'd consider exploring trading Alexander Romanov, but if that's what gets the deal done, would they consider doing that? And then really, other than that, Jordan Harris looked good. He came over from Northeastern at the end of the season. Jonathan Drouin, again, is that a guy that the Devils even want? That's where things get a little bit more interesting, because then at that rate, if you're taking on Jonathan Drouin's contract, you're actually doing the Habs a favor. So now that's even more value for the Devils, which again means you're going to have to give up more prospects and draft picks. So at this rate, I think it's a really interesting storyline if they were to get the second overall pick. If they were to draft first overall Shane Wright and the Montreal Canadiens come back to the board or back to the podium with the second pick, drafting Juraj Slafkovsky. I'm not saying it won't happen, but it's going to take a lot of things going the right way, because I just think from what the Devils want, I think if they were to make this trade, it would have to be a guy like Brock Besser or an Alex DeBrincat from Chicago. They don't want a just huge package from what we've been hearing from the Devils. The mindset is we want a player that could come in right now this season and help us out. And to be honest, if I were the Devils, I would keep the second pick. You got Juraj Slafkovsky on an entry-level contract, plus you could also spend money in free agency getting, say, that Riley Smith or maybe going to the free agent, going into the trade market and looking at teams that have cap issues. Say Kevin Fiala in Minnesota. They don't have the money to keep him. You might get him on a cheaper deal in a trade. Brock Besser, same thing in Vancouver. He's a restricted free agent this summer as well. And they could kind of play sniper mode. I mean, you look at even in Vegas, they seem to be looking to blow things up to keep some of those guys around. Do they look at the market and pick up? I've heard, Alec Martinez has been an interesting name to the Bruins. Would the Devils consider a guy like that? They have the cap space. Do they consider a guy like Jonathan Marchessault, who's also on the market, again, because Vegas is trying to shed salary? So that's where the Devils can hit some home runs. And, what's the Devils have to get a really nice package if they are to make this trade. And I'm not sure Montreal has what the Devils want. Like I said, let's say 2015 Jonathan Drouin. I know. We could laugh about that now. But 2015 Jonathan Drouin, I think the Devils do consider that. And they do make that trade. But at this point, I don't think that gets it done. And like I said, I don't see it unless they're giving up Suzuki or Caulfield, which doesn't, kind of defeats the purpose for the Devils or for the Canadiens. Again, if that's what they want to do, if they really are that sold on Slavkovsky that they will give up Caulfield, that's the only way I see this getting done. And I think that's a bit of a stretch. So with that said, let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. Like I said, the Devils side of things, I think you're going to ask for a premium. This is from Elliot Friedman. He said, the New Jersey Devils would consider moving their second overall pick if they get a good offer. And by a good offer, it has to be substantially like the Devils. It has to be an offer that the Devils could not say no to. And other than that, I just don't really see it. And to kind of follow that up, we have some rumors around the Canadiens to end today's video. Marco D'Amico, Jonathan Drouin could be on the move if the Canadiens can find a trade partner. Again, the Devils do make sense, but for a different reason in terms of maybe they end up acquiring Jonathan Drouin to help, alleviate the cap for the Canadiens. But again, you're doing yourself a disservice because that keeps you from a guy in free agency. So the way Jonathan Drouin's been playing, his injuries, and to be completely honest, he's had some, he's been, mentally it's been rough for him recently the last couple years. He's just not a reliable enough player where I just don't know if it's worth it necessarily for the Devils to even take that on. Or really, quite frankly, any team in the National Hockey League. That's going to be a tough deal for the Habs to move. Not to mention, he's also making a pretty big chunk of change. He's making $5.5 million next season. And for a guy that just hasn't been productive and reliable enough, I do think it's going to be tough. And to cap it off, this is kind of what stirred everything up. This was from the Mug NHL on Instagram. The Canadiens are extremely high on Slovakian forward Juraj Slavkovsky, but will not pass up on forward Shane Wright at the draft, meaning that they are drafting Shane Wright first overall. The Devils are rumored to be listening to offers. Let me see if I can find the rest of this. Are rumored to be listening to offers on the second pick, so it'll be interesting to see if the Habs can swing the deal. And like I said, I do think that is a bit of a stretch, but it has been talked about, and I definitely had to mention it. From what I've heard from the Devils fans, they don't want to give up that pick. They want to select Slavkovsky. That way you've got Hischier, Hughes, Slavkovsky, and then all that depth that they have already. Guys like Pavel Zacha, Miles Wood, Jesper Bratt, Brett Seney, all those younger guys in the organization that can continue to develop. I forgot the other guy's name on the Devils that had a breakout season. Yegor Sharangovich. Those are the kind of guys that if you're the Devils side of things, again, you have some promising guys there. You add Slavkovsky to that wagon. This is going to be a really good Devils team in the future. But again, for the Habs side of things, you know that if they really, really want him, they will find a way to get him, and it will come at a premium. So guys, let me know what you think. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again next time.